Now, if you're getting ready to go to court with a narcissist, whether it's divorce court or otherwise, you're going to want to be fully prepared, and you're definitely not going to want to walk in without having the best possible strategies and tactics at your fingertips, because this is going to be no cakewalk. The narcissist is going to make it as difficult for you as possible. So stay tuned and listen to the end so that you can get all the tips and you'll be all ready to go. All right, number one is have everything that's possible to be in writing, because narcissists, by their nature, are pathological liars. So they are going to lie about things that you said, you didn't say, conversations that took place or didn't take place, what they said or didn't say, whatever it is, it's going to be twisted, it's going to be manipulated. So you want to make sure that you can keep everything in writing to the extent that that's possible. So, and ideally it would be like in an email or something like that, where you actually have the timestamp on it, you have the date stamp on it, you have the email, who it came from, the email address of who it came from, who it went to, that sort of thing. Text messages are admissible in court nowadays, but it's just a little bit more difficult to authenticate them when it comes to evidence in court. So it is better if you can do it via email if possible. The other problem with text messages is that they tend to go away after a certain period of time. And especially if you don't save them, it's really difficult to go back and find them. The phone companies don't even really keep them either. So you're definitely going to want to make sure that you use email if possible. If you're co-parenting, having a co-parenting app such as Talking Parents or Fair or Our Family Wizard, something like that is always a good idea too. I mean, the bottom line is that they're going to try to get you away from this writing. They don't want to be in writing because they know that it will box them in, and narcissists don't want to be boxed in. So they're going to do whatever they can to get you to meet with them, to go against what you said before, things like that. They're just, let's just meet. We don't need the writing. We don't need all these other people around us. Let's just meet at Starbucks or whatever. And the reason why they're doing that is to get you into a place where they can manipulate you again. So by keeping everything in writing as much as possible, you can minimize that problem. Now, what the flip side of this, by the way, is for you to remember that every single writing is a potential trial exhibit. So if you don't want to see it again, then don't put it in writing. The way I just say it to people is, just imagine the judge is leaning over your shoulder and watching you write that text or that email. And before you hit send, say, Judge, Your Honor, is this something that you would want to see? And if it's not, then you don't want to send it. Okay, the second thing that you're going to want to do is use video for depositions. And the reason why you're going to want to do this, and yes, it's a little bit more expensive. You have to pay for the court reporter. Now you have to pay for the videographer. But it goes back again to boxing that narcissist in. If you box them in enough, then they will act like the spoiled temper tantrum child, and their true colors will show up, and you'll be able to use that against them down the road. So, but just trying to control their behavior using video will definitely help, because if you don't use video, what they tend to do is do things that don't show up on the record, meaning the court reporter will take down everything that's actually said in the deposition. When you look at the deposition transcript, it'll just say question, blah, 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 answer, blah, blah, blah. There's nothing around it. There's no description given around it. So if that narcissist is giving you dirty looks, making faces, all the things that they do, and they do, then nothing is taken down. Now, for me as a lawyer, there have been many times where I've had to say, let the record reflect that so-and-so is making faces at so-and-so. But, how many times can the lawyer do that over and over again without just constantly interrupting the deposition? So by videoing it, you actually see what how they're responding and how they're acting. Plus, it makes them behave a little bit better because they're a little less likely to be a complete jackass if there's a video shining in their face. If this is all sounding really good to you so far, put a thumbs up in the comments. Okay, number 3 is focus on your own case. So this is one of the biggest mistakes that I see lawyers make. I see lots and lots of people make, because it's just natural to want to focus on what's the other side doing and all of their flaws and all of their mistakes and how is he or she getting away with this and look at how badly they're behaving and isn't the judge going to see that? And the answer is maybe and probably, and yeah, you will want to bring out all of the other bad behavior of the other side. But, you know, just like in football, if all you have is a good defense and you have no offense whatsoever, then you never score any points, right? So you want to make sure that your case is as strong as possible. Focus on your case. Make sure that the facts and the supporting documentation and everything is done to create your case and make sure it's super strong. And then for the other side, you create that leverage to help motivate them into wanting to come to the table to potentially have a settlement conversation with you. Or, you know, you have all the points that make them look bad. Yes, you know, anything that shoots their credibility. You know, when people say, oh, how are they getting away with this? They're lying all the time. How are they getting away with this? So the thing I want you to remember, here's a good reality check for you. And that is, who would stop them from getting away with something? The only person who has any power over another human being in the court system is the judge, not the lawyers, not you, not family members. No one has the power to order someone to do anything other than the judge. And how do you get in front of the judge? Through motions, through hearings, through trials, things like that. Things have to be filed in the court system, and then you have to have a hearing, bring it to the judge's attention, and only at that point can you potentially rein in their behavior. But while you're waiting for that time to get in front of the judge, you're just documenting, you're keeping track, keeping track, keeping track. So that's how you're building your case. If you're dealing with a child custody situation, for example, and the person just never shows up to get the kids, or they show up late, or they constantly change the time, you just document it, document it, document it. And then when it comes time to present that to the court, you have a nice log of exactly what happened and when, what time did they show up, what time did they leave, you know, all of that. So eventually it will work in your favor. But just remember that you want to keep track of your own case and make sure that that is bolstered as much as possible, and then highlight the weaknesses of the other person as well. Okay, number 4 is what I started to allude to in number 3, which is document, document, document. And I cannot stress this enough. Keep really careful notes. Have an app open on your phone. Have a journal, a log, whatever you need to do so that wherever you are, real time, you can be logging what's happening. And I have won entire cases on these types of logs. Let me tell you, they do work. It is critically important. So make sure that you're documenting, because what you're doing is you're slowly closing in on your narcissist from every angle. It's you know, this is war. This is the art of war. And so you're building these tactics and you're closing in on them from various different angles. And it doesn't look like you're doing much until you've got them fully surrounded. And that's when you realize, hey, I have them. And only then is when they're going to want to start to have a conversation with you about potentially settling the case and not having to go to court, because you know that the main thing about a narcissist is that they don't want to look back. I have a lot more on this in my videos on how to negotiate with a narcissist and how to negotiate with a narcissist X, and I will drop links below to those videos. You'll definitely want to check those out. Okay, number 5, definitely do very thorough research. Have everything ready to go. Do you need appraisals? Do you need valuations? Do you need a forensic accountant? Do we need to figure out what the person's true income is by looking at their bank records? Do we need to figure out a lifestyle analysis by looking at credit card statements and bank statements and things like that? Everything needs to be ready to go, all I's dotted, all T's crossed. Don't leave any stone unturned. Don't leave anything to winging it, because whatever your weaknesses are, wherever there's that weakness in your case, that's where they're going to find you. And that's where they're going to jam their foot in and open that door and make it into a big, huge thing. So also, in being prepared, you're going to want to make sure that you do all the research for the other side. What are they going to argue? What points do they have against me? What leverage do they have against me? And then be ready to answer that. I anticipated this argument, and here's my response. Because if you're only prepared for your side, then you are only half ready to go. So make sure that you are ready for both sides, as if you're preparing for both sides. And one word about leverage, by the way, is make sure that once you've got that leverage, you use it at the most opportune time. Do not give it away too early. Do not show it to them before you get to court, because you want to use it when you need it. All right, so the last one, number 6, is to keep your emotions in check. And this is going to be one of the hardest things to do, because narcissists know how to push your buttons and they know how to manipulate you. So they're going to make faces, they're going to make little snarky comments, they're going to say things under their breath. And, so I would totally avoid making eye contact with them in the courtroom. It's not going to serve you. Just look at the judge. When you're testifying, just look at the judge. Make sure that you've practiced your testimony. I, as an attorney, go over my direct testimony with my clients. If your attorney doesn't do that, as a matter of course, ask your attorney to do that with you, or ask them for the questions and have somebody else practice it with you. You want to just be able to at least control the parts that you can control, which is your direct testimony. You should basically know what those questions are going to be. Your attorney will be asking you those questions, and be ready with what you're going to say, so that you're not stumped and you're not feeling nervous and anxious. You know exactly, okay, this is that question, here's how I planned to respond to it. I mean, of course, you're going to answer truthfully. You just want to be prepared on how you're going to word your answers, how you're going to say it, what things you want to make sure to get in, what things you want to make sure to say, things like that. So, so that's your direct testimony. Now, as for your cross-examination, you should also see if your lawyer, I know I usually do this as a matter of course. I tell my clients what to expect for cross-examination too. I even sometimes get another lawyer in my office to do a mock cross-examination with the person and sort of beat them up a little bit, just so that they're ready. You know, the kinds of questions that I would ask under cross-examination, something like that. So the more you can be prepared, the less emotional you will be, the less anxious you will be. But, during the worst, most traumatic time of your life, you have to make the most critical decisions of your life. Mm-hmm. And so you're under siege, and it's bad enough when you're divorcing normally, but then when you add on the layer of divorcing a narcissist, now you're trying to make decisions about your money, your home, your children, all the things that mean the most to you, your business, potentially, while you're under siege and while you're trying to heal yourself. I mean, people who've been in narcissistic narcissistic relationships for long periods of time are like PTSD. I mean, they're seriously, traumatized, and they're trying to make decisions. So, for example, this woman I spoke to this morning, she wants to change her custody arrangement. She said that, when she entered into the custody agreement at the time, she was so terrorized by him. She just wanted to get out of it. She just wanted to be done.
And so she agreed to stuff that she didn't want, that she didn't, now she regrets, you know? So what I'd like to hear from Tina is, how did you keep your mindset strong? How were you able to keep going and not give up and keep yourself healthy?
It was a process. The first few years, had I not been journaling and blogging about it, if I were to look back, I remember very little of it. I feel like I was operating in a state of trauma and shock and emotions. And for me, it was a few years into it before I started going to sit in the courtroom. And it was a way for me to learn about the process and, how attorneys handle things and how, different case law. And I became a fixture in the courtroom on days that it had nothing to do with me. And just there as an observer, because it allowed, first for me to desensitize myself, because it just became part of my so then walking into the courtroom when it was my own case, I was much stronger. And I was educated on what was going on and the motions that I was filing. Um, and I didn't get it right all the time, but it helped tremendously. And what I learned is that so much of it is about strategy, and judges and
Yeah.
attorneys, anybody in those courtrooms, they don't want to see your emotions. That was one of the things I learned quickly is I would walk to the bathroom in the courthouse and have a panic attack or vomit or break down crying. But when I walked through those doors, I had to, put my shoulders back and my head up and, almost role play was kind of the
Yeah.
mentality I had to have. But, and just forming alliances when I would be in the courtroom and I would see another parent who I could, identify as the healthy parent in the situation. I'd follow them out into the hallway and say, here's my card. Sounds crazy. I'd love to go to coffee with you because we have a lot in common. And that started building my local team. So those were some of the things that I did in the beginning. And from day one, I remember people telling me, this is a 50-50 state. California, I think every state is 50-50 at this point. And that's, truly what you just have to accept that. And I refused. I couldn't even grasp how somebody could, some people, it's truly, their exes are so good at impression management that that may be in the cards for them. And then you're forced to accept radical acceptance, managing your expectations, that whole thing. But for me, I couldn't accept that that was what was best for my kids, and that was the mentality I kept moving me forward, and really celebrating the little victories, which I consider to be anytime my kids are a little bit safer. um, and that just kept the momentum going until I think it was about year 6 that we were assigned a custody evaluator, and he really understood what I was up against. And his orders or his recommendation to the court were unlike anything I've ever heard of before. And it was so strict. And the judge ended up saying, I'm not going to adopt all of these because I don't want to micromanage this guy. But the ultimate ruling on year 6 was permanent supervised visits. So he could never again be alone. And the judge said, I intend for these to be final custody orders, which was huge. But as we know, a narcissist can't handle that. Their ego doesn't want someone supervising them. That's a huge threat. And so he jumped ship, and we didn't hear from him for a year and a half. Um, but that was a year and a half of peace. And I
Yeah.
was fantastic. So it's those baby steps. It's, what, today my kids are a little bit safer, and that kept me going. And when I did, there were so many times where I threw myself a huge pity party when I got slammed in court, and I just always set an end time. I can allow myself a day or two to be mad or angry because it's warranted. But then, Friday, I'm going to dust myself off and I'm going to try again because my kids need me. There's no one else that's going to fight for them.
Absolutely. I just want to inject a little bit of the legal side of some of the things that you just said. And one is that, yeah, there is a kind of unspoken presumption, I'll call it, for this 50-50 thing right now in most of the states. I think there are a couple of holdouts. I think New York doesn't quite have that presumption yet, but it's not necessarily a legal presumption, meaning um, a legal presumption would mean that when the court sits down, when the judge sits down, then they're going to presume that this is what it's going to be. And then the other person who doesn't want that has the burden of proving why it shouldn't be that. So that would be a legal presumption. So it's not necessarily a legal presumption in a lot of the states, but it's kind of like an unspoken presumption. And so what I want people to remember is that what the real presumption is and should always be is best interest of the child. And I just had a situation with this with the judge back in January. I was at a hearing, and the judge, the baby at the time was maybe 5 months old or something like that. And the judge was like, well, you guys are coming to trial in May. So, don't bother coming in here if, that it's going to be 50-50 and whatever. And I'm like, really, Your Honor, before you even hear one word about what's in the best interest of this child, that there's 18 factors in the statute that you're supposed to consider. So if you're making a decision right here and now, then that's grounds for your recusal. And so, right away, he's like, oh, of course, we have to, consider the factors. And, and of course, he backpedaled right away. But, I want people to understand that, yes, it's that, but don't just give up on that. Don't just say that's what it is and be resigned to that. Remind the court, remind the judge, remind everybody you can that the standard is best interest of the child. And there is, I'm sure, a statute in every single state that has, the factors that have to be considered by the court. So don't just like resign yourself to that's what it's going to be. So
Rebecca, I have a comment on that though, because despite that, the best interest of the child, anyone who's, doing advocacy work, mental health work, you've been in the divorce space, in almost all of these cases, I'm willing to hazard a guess that 75 to 90% of these cases, they're not taking into account the best interest of the child. And these statutes and these 18 points and all this stuff can exist. And in that particular case, it might have even been easier because it was a 5-month-old baby. But when I am seeing over and over and over again is cases where there is no way on planet Earth that the best interest of this child is being accounted for. So even if that's written into the law, and I suppose, yes, it becomes one more grounds of which an attorney could attempt to push the point, I still feel like most judges are going to reject that out of hand because they still feel like the argument of a parent that's antagonistic and toxic and undermining and invalidating and alienating and all the things that they are, is that they're going to say there's no evidence of that. The evidence that you'd have to show that it's not in the best interest of the child is often quite physical. Like you lived 20,000 miles from the kid's school, or you travel 3 weeks a month. They'll run with that. But these subtle psychological factors, which I don't even think are subtle, I am not seeing a judge in America account for this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's the difficulty, right? Because it's like, it is so subtle and the judges are always looking for the easy way out.
Yes.
I mean, and so it is difficult. So what you have to do is you have to be able to present a case in such a way that they can't look away. And you can't go in and say the person's a narcissist or, accuse them of any kind of something like that that's not readily supportable. Because that's when you're going to lose your own credibility, even if the person is the most flaming narcissist on the planet. So you have to go in with, reams of supporting documentation as to what's in the best interest of the child. I mean, Tina's nodding her head because, you figured it out. And I'm really amazed and give you such props that you were able to go in there and think of the idea of, I'm going to go watch other court proceedings and figure it out. So talk more about like how you were able to do that, because, there's so many people out there who can't afford a good lawyer, who can't afford, a therapist. They can't afford anything. They're like, you were talking about going to the food pantry or whatever. I mean, if it's like eating versus an attorney, you're going to pick eating.
Right.
So talk more about that.
So, I know one of the things I talk to parents all the time who will tell me, I don't have time to go sit in the courtroom. I tell them, you don't have time not to. I was working full time. One of the things I didn't mention, when I left my marriage, um, just so people don't, go, well, she has all these resources or whatnot. I left with $178 to my name, not a penny in retirement, not a penny in, any type of account, literally under $200. And I was working full time. I had 2 little girls in preschool. The cost of preschool is insane when you've got 2 little ones. But I made that a priority. And, however you have to do it, for me, that was the number one. That was the best thing I could have ever done. It gave me so much insight into things attorneys used. And then I would go, you know what? Well, and a lot of people, so, how did you win based on him being a narcissist? I've never used that word. I've written 4 books on the topic, but I've never used that word narcissist to anybody. I focused on his patterns of behavior that were affecting my kids.
Exactly.
And, and pain, seeing, and one thing I don't think people understand, if I were in courtroom A, I would present my exact case one way. But if I were in courtroom B, just based on what I know about that judge, I would present my case completely different, because they're human. They bring in their own biases and
they do.
personal. There's a judge down in Southern California who lost a child to a drug overdose. So she takes addiction issues very seriously. My ex-husband was an alcoholic. So you better believe I would hit heavy on the alcoholism in her courtroom. And I think people don't give that, there's no rule book for any of this. And,
It's so smart. So smart.
So smart.
Thank you. So, so much of it was learning, so many learning lessons. And when I was in the hallways of the courtroom on break, I would make conversations with every attorney that would talk to me, and, and you share my story. I couldn't afford their consults, but if they're bored sitting in the hallway, I would use that as an opportunity to introduce myself, let them know. And so many were so helpful to me through this process, just really forming those connections, knowing who every single player is in your system. Every evaluator, you need a notebook of just family court professionals. Anytime you hear something about one of them, or you witness an evaluator testifying in court, or, a minors counsel, write down every detail about them so you can make an informed decision. If you are going to be assigned an evaluator. I think one of the things I was so naive about in the beginning, I was desperate for someone to listen to me. And so I would show up in court and I would beg, appoint minors counsel, appoint an evaluator. Somebody's got to see what's happening. And if I could go back and do it all over again, I would have said, here are my 3 selections for an evaluator. I don't care which anybody can choose from this list.
That's what
but
I do.
would, yeah, exactly. And then it gives the other side the power and control that they need to make that decision. But like in my case, the minors counsel who was appointed, because I didn't know anything about him, he turned out to be a bigger narcissist than than my ex-husband in a lot of ways. And so it was a complete waste of time and energy and resources. And so really entrenching yourself in your system and learning the ropes and the people, you have to do it.
That's such great advice. Really, really great advice. As you were talking, I was wondering if one of the other things that you did, because if you did, this would be a great idea. If you know that there are particularly good lawyers, or lawyers who understand, what you're dealing with, pleadings are actually public information. So did you go to the clerk and read motions and look at stuff that other lawyers had filed?
So if I saw a case that closely resembled my case, I would take down their names and go find them, because in our court, we're pretty archaic. We have like you have to get these little slides and you look
Oh,
at
okay.
all of the microfiche. And so I would go pull people's cases and just sit there and go through their whole case from
That's what
start
I
to
was wondering.
finish.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's exactly
Yeah.
what I was wondering that you did. Yeah. So that's so smart. Really, really smart. But of course, very time consuming,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So, um, so Dr. Romani, what would be, ways that people can kind of self-care and cope
Mhm.
during this process?
Tina, what is so striking about what you just said, and just so everyone knows, Tina is actually literally one of my favorite people on the planet, and she knows that too.
Oh.
So I really, I mean, I know the depth of her story is that, what's striking to anyone hearing this is that, and what I see in many of the clients I work with is that they get exhausted. They go to a place of full on helplessness, hopelessness, and powerlessness, which are often some of the last stops on the train before full blown major depression and anxiety disorders and all of that, like really major psychological and psychiatric, fallout from this. And as a result, the persistence you showed, Tina, is remarkable because
Hmm.
and what I love about what you did, Tina, was you weren't trying to control things you can control, namely judges who didn't get it, custody evaluators who didn't get it, court systems who didn't get it. You weren't trying to control those mechanisms. You were trying to learn about them. And of all the guidance I've ever heard, because you feel so powerless, give yourself the time to learn. Look up the cases, learn what happened in those cases, learn about the judges. I mean, I think that anytime we can give a person a sense of control, that's something they can actually do, is really, really important. But I do have to say, Tina, there's a unique resilience that you're manifesting, because I do think for people, the day in and day out, the demoralization, and no matter how much evidence they present to the court, it feels like no matter what, it's not working out their way, to the point where I've seen children who are, being forced to co-reside, and have custody with the more narcissistic parent, to the incredible detriment of the child's mental health. And the mother can't even make the argument in this case that really it is exposure to this toxic parent. I mean, he has completely worked that whole system beautifully. So to your question though, Rebecca, number one, I would say it's absolutely critical you reach out not only for therapy with somebody who gets narcissistic abuse. And I'm really put that point on it, because many, many times I actually don't think that clients in this space should be entirely targeted as though they have post-traumatic stress disorder. I think PTSD is a very different kind of phenomenology. And while addressing early traumas and all of that may be an issue, I think that there's something rather unique about the narcissistic abuse space, because it moves pretty quickly when a person gets lots of education. Because I am shocked in 4 to 6 sessions when a client really is helped to understand what happened, how their own early, their family of origin issues connect, and they see it. They're like, that's it. Like, I'm good. Thank you. I'm not a crazy person. Thank you. That's not how treatment for post-traumatic stress
Ah, that
disorder
is
works.
so
Yeah,
good.
it's very, very different. And now, are there many, many people out there who experience issues in their experience of a narcissistic divorce, physical violence, sexual violence, severe financial deprivation, coercive control, all things that are associated with PTSD? Absolutely. And I do think that is a subset of cases, but I think an even larger subset of cases are people who really are experiencing a more pure version of being absolutely confused by the manipulation. And once they simply get psychoeducation, which is how I got into putting out these YouTube videos, because not everyone could come sit in my office. There's just not even enough hours in the day for me to do that. I wrote books for this reason, thinking if people could get this, they may stop blaming themselves. So it becomes therapy with someone who gets it. Number two is also accessing the advocacy community. That is something Tina opened me up to, is that there are people like Tina out there who get it and put resources out in a way from a lived experience perspective. Her Facebook page is a robust resource that I refer all of my clients going through this to, and to her website. So those services exist, basically a support group mechanism of people who get it. But then beyond that, I really, really do tell people is that you are not defined by this experience. I actually think that survivors of narcissistic abuse who really then take this as a jumping off point, to the degree we're talking about it being a trauma, what I really do see is tremendous post-traumatic growth. People saying, I can see these people coming from a mile away. I am actually going to be a lot more careful in my relationships. I am getting rid of the people in my life who are not good for me. They actually do a whole like clean out, like a toxic dump They
So
just,
good.
they knock everyone out because they're like, I'm not doing this anymore. And they realize how many people in their midst were the enablers of the narcissistic abuse. And through a good support network, therapy, advocacy, support groups, you get people who say, it's okay. It's okay to remove people from your life, because they'll get a lot of guilt. Like, how dare you not speak to this one? How dare you do you. And so it's very much it's a process of healing, which I've got to tell you, I have seen many, many people soar. They go back to school, they take on the careers they thought they wouldn't, they travel, they feel like better parents. I mean, they really do come out of it. But all of that said, it really is a daily practice. Things like mindfulness, meditation, getting also treatment for other disorders that may have come up or gotten exacerbated, anxiety disorders, depression, substance use disorders that sometimes flare up in the face of all of this. It's about taking care of you. And also keep in mind, Rebecca and Tina, you know this very well, is that people who've been through a narcissistic divorce or a long period of narcissistic abuse in their lives, self-care for themselves is the first thing they threw out. They stop taking care of themselves. They'll often start eating more poorly, gaining weight, making themselves at risk for things like diabetes. They don't get their regular health care appointments. They don't take care of themselves because in some ways, staying in a narcissistically abusive relationship is so sort of self-harming that you're like, why would I take care of myself? You know, it's like you're a car, you just drive into the ground at that point. And that awakening of getting out of that relationship is often an awakening that you're this beautiful soul, this beautiful creature that deserves to be taken care of. So it's lots of enlightenment, lots of awakening, lots of education, lots of support, lots of therapy. And again, slowly but surely going into a wiser future.
Yeah, that's such great stuff. Really, really good advice. And, I just want to add in, as far as like the legal perspective on this, something that people can do is, maybe if you can't afford to have a lawyer for the entire process, but maybe have a consulting lawyer, maybe somebody that you'd be willing to, if you have a little bit of money, you could go in and just make sure that, kind of like what Tina did when she was sort of having these hallway conversations. But, if you wanted to have somebody who was, taking a look at an agreement and maybe just reviewing an agreement for you and just spending an hour of their time doing that, something, where you get a little bit of that legal protection if you can afford to have even that. Obviously I have a program for that as well for people. And, but if there's a way that you can access some help, that's, I think, really, really helpful for people to have access to that. Now you're dealing with a narcissist in a court setting, and you're feeling like they just always get their way. I've dealt with it so many times where people will come into my office, even in the beginning of a case, and say, I think that they're going to fool everyone because the person who's the narcissist is going to win, is going to get everybody to believe that they're wonderful and I'm horrible. And narcissists do start their smear campaigns in that in that discard phase. And if you want to know more about what the signs are of a smear campaign, definitely check out my video on signs of a narcissist smear campaign. But once that smear campaign starts, they're in this mode of trying to make sure that you're the one that looks bad and they're the one that looks good. So they're going to be kind of love bombing everybody in the system, including the judges, including their lawyer, your lawyer even. And if there's a custody evaluator involved, they're going to be love bombing that person. And they're going to be trying to make you look like you're the bad one. So they may be filing bogus motions. They may be calling you an abuser, really horrible things. I've seen, really good parents be the victim of the other parent saying that parent is an abuser, or that parent is unfit, or that parent is a drug addict, or something like that. And you're sitting there thinking, I'm like having coffee in my house, I don't really know. But they start that, and they not only say it to people sometimes. They actually even put it in pleadings. You know, you'll actually see a motion or something that is filled with lies. And you think, how are they getting away with this? How are they getting away with this? I can't tell you how many clients I've heard say to me, how are they getting away with this? Well, let me just first address that. The one thing that you have to remember is that the only person who has any power to order somebody to do something is the judge, no one else. You know, I actually had a client say to me, you've done nothing to control him and his behavior. And I remember thinking, what would I do other than file motions? Because that's the power that your lawyer has, is to file something with the court. But remember, when something is filed with the court, it just sits there in the clerk's file, doesn't do anything until a hearing is actually had, because those filings are, for the most part, not evidence that can be accepted into the court system, actually in a hearing setting. So once that motion is filed, then you can go in front of a judge. And that's how you can start exposing the narcissist in court. How do you do it? You do it by not actually saying the person is a narcissist. Don't use the word narcissist in court. I actually have a whole video on that. Make sure you check that out on whether you can even use the word narcissist in court. But what you're going to do is you're going to actually have other ways that you can expose this narcissist for their behavior. And you do that very systematically. There's no magic wand. There's no go buy this thing and that's going to be the thing, other than the SLAY program, because the SLAY program will show you how to do that. But what you're going to be doing is creating documentation and exhibits that actually systematically show that that person is a bad person. And you want to do it in light of the statutes, in light of something that the judge is going to care about. Because remember, the judge has to apply the law. That's the judge's job. So what a judge will do is they'll listen to that side, they'll listen to this side, but remember, they just get a little teeny snapshot. You might have been dealing with this person for 15 or 20 years. You get like a couple of hours in front of a judge to expose this person. So you want to make sure it's good. You want to make sure that it packs a punch. So you're going to create summaries, for example, of when the person lied, and then have all your supporting documentation attached to it, or create summaries of when they didn't pick up the kids, or didn't show up on time, or bad-mouthed you, you know, something like that. But you're going to do it in light of the statute. So if the best interest of the child statute says that parents are supposed to foster a close and continuing relationship between the children and the other parent, and you've got tons of text messages where they're saying to the kids that, you know, the other parent is an alcoholic, or neglectful, doesn't want you, or something like that, those become wonderful trial exhibits. So, you know, you're actually giving the judge something that they can hold on to, that they can use when they're applying that law, that actually gives you the results that you actually want. Just going in and saying that person is a narcissist isn't going to get you anywhere. So that's not how you expose them. You expose them by actually doing your homework, which a lot of that, I have a 45-page workbook in the SLAY program, so you should definitely check that out. But that's how you're ultimately going to expose them, by systematically using the information that you have and putting it together in light of the statutes that the judge is actually going to care about. That's how you will expose them. And if you are so ready to expose that narcissist in court, give me a expose the truth in the comments. So remember that narcissists feed off of narcissistic supply, and one of the things that they're going to do is try to get all the judges and everybody to love them. So what you want to do is create leverage by figuring out which person in the system they're going to respect the most, which is probably the judge, and then create leverage, which is going to potentially threaten to expose them for who they are. So, and if you want to know more about leverage, definitely check out my video on creating leverage. But that's going to be one of the whole keys to this whole thing. That's the L in my SLAY program. So S is strategy and L is leverage. So you want to create this leverage that's going to threaten to expose them, and that way they potentially might even settle. And I know a lot of people think, oh, nobody ever settles with a narcissist. You can never get them to settle, but that is so not true. If you threaten a supply source that's more important for them to keep than the supply that they get from jerking you around in the system, you will be able to resolve your case. I'm going to give you 5 ways to make sure that you beat a narcissist in court. So you're going to want to make sure you stay till the end. You're going to want to make sure that you save this video. You're going to want to make sure you share it out. You're going to want to make sure that you go ahead and watch it over and over again, because I'm going to give you all the ways to make sure that you beat a narcissist in court. Okay, so what you're going to want to do is you're going to remember the acronym knock them dead. All right, so DEADD, so 2 D's, but DEADD, knock them dead. So the first D stands for document everything, and I mean everything. You know, you're going to want to journal everything. You're going to want to document everything. In my SLAY program, I actually have 12 different things that you're going to want to be documenting, but you're going to want to document everything with regard to finances, to your children, if you have children, anything that they do that seems out of the ordinary. I know it's a pain, but you know, if you have a notes app or something, just note it, because you're not going to remember. But you know, even if it's crazy, oh, I don't know if I should write that down, but you know, you just never know. And there's many different ways that these things come into play. So you will want to make sure that you document everything, whether it's a business case or a family law case, or it's against a business partner, maybe it's a case against an employer or something like that. It always is something that you're going to need to be doing, is documenting. Whether it's a timeline form, you end up needing it for the statutes to prove different elements of a statute. You definitely need documentation. I also have a podcast where I ended up interviewing one of the people who use my Slay for Biz program, Sharon Scott. I highly recommend that you check that out, because she talked about how she used my program and it really helped her a lot. So definitely document everything. The next thing is the E, emotions. Keep them in check. You're definitely going to want to keep your emotions in check. There's so many different reasons that you want to keep your emotions in check. I mean, for one thing is that they want to trigger you constantly. They love to see you squirm, so they get supply from it. And you really don't want to give them narcissistic supply, obviously, because that's no fun. I mean, they just get the satisfaction of seeing you go crazy, right? I mean, why do you want to do that? But then the next thing is that they use your reaction against you. They go, look, there's the crazy one. There's the one that's the problem. And they will use that against you in a number of ways. They use the emails against you, the texts against you. They may even be videotaping against you. They use the witnesses against you, whatever it is. So definitely keep your emotions in check. They use it for custody, so many different things. So definitely E, keep your emotions in check. And it doesn't help you when you're negotiating either if you're all over the place when it comes to settlements, because then you end up settling for things that you regret 2 months down the road, 3 months down the road. You're like, I didn't want to settle for that. Because a lot of times you're like, oh, I just ended up settling for that because I just wanted it to be done. I just wanted it to be over with, or maybe you were just feeling pressured. You know, really try to keep your emotions in check. And by the way, if you're really struggling with that, because a lot of times when you've been dealing with a narcissist for a long period of time, you are in a trauma state, especially PTSD sometimes. I do have a partnership with BetterHelp. You can go to betterhelp.com/Rebecca Zung. I do receive commissions on that. It doesn't cost you anymore. We have a partnership with them because I wanted to have a partnership with a service that we could trust, that we could recommend. If you are struggling, go to betterhelp.com/Rebecca Zung so that you can get the help and support that you need if you're having trouble with your emotions and you're having trouble with trauma. So that's the E. The next one is always wear the white hat. That's the A. Always wear the white hat. And what do I mean by that? I mean by that in that you want to be the one, if you end up in front of the judge, which that's what this is about, you want to be the one where the judge is like, hey, this is the person that obviously is the good one. Let the narcissist be the one who's badly behaving. A lot of times it's so easy to fall into, hey, they're behaving badly. They're doing things wrong. They did it too. I can do it too. What happens though is then you have a situation where the judge is just like seeing like two kids that are fighting. So for those of you who are out there watching, who have children and you have more than one, what happens is they just are like, oh, both of you just stop it. You know, they don't see that, oh, well, they started it or they're worse. They just see two people who just are fighting. So you want to be the one who's consistently not being in the mud with the other one. Because if you are the one who's what I call always wearing the white hat, who's not engaging, who didn't respond, who didn't get into it, and the other one is always the one who's constantly the badly behaved one, then it makes it really, really obvious who is the bad one. And it's kind of hand in hand with keeping your emotions in check, but it's even one step much, much further than that. You really, really want to be the one who's just always behaving, always doing the right thing. So just kind of imagine that the judge is sort of walking around with you and watching every single thing that you're doing. Always wear the white hat. That's the A. All right. So the next one is don't go anywhere alone. That's the D, the first D in Knock 'em Dead. And we're going through all the elements of what to do to beat a narcissist in court. So, you know, this is because they're going to say you followed them, you did this, you did that. They lie all the time. So they're constantly going to be saying that you were menacing, that you were threatening, that you did this with the kids, or that you touched somebody inappropriately, or whatever it is that they make up constantly. And then you end up having to defend against these ridiculous claims. So you want to make sure that you have people around as much as you possibly can. If you have children, for example, have your exchanges for custody at daycares, at schools, you know, at shopping plazas or places where people are around, because you just don't want situations where they can make things up about what's going on. And in that same vein, by the way, you're going to want to make sure that even depositions are videotaped if possible. And I have actually a whole video on how to be a narcissist in mediation. I talk about that in there, and you should definitely check out that video as well, because a lot of you who are trying to beat a narcissist in court are also mediating with a narcissist, and you should definitely check out that video as well. And I also do have a whole video where I interviewed Judge Lynn Toller. You guys should definitely check out that video too. She was the judge on divorce court for 17 years, and her video interview was very, very highly fascinating. So definitely check that out too. And if you guys are so ready to knock them dead, put knock them dead in the comments, because I'm so ready to help you knock them dead. And if you've been following along with how to beat a narcissist in court and you've been following along with my acronym, you know there's one more D. The last D is decoys. It stands for decoys. And what I mean by decoys is you really do not want to give them your best offer or give them any of your best evidence or show them any of your cards or show them any of your hands until you're ready to unveil it in court or when you're ready. I mean, a lot of times while you're standing on the courthouse steps or even at lunch during the trial, they want to settle, they're ready to have settlement talks, or even maybe the eve before trial or a couple of days before, they're ready to have some settlement talks at that point or something. And you might be ready at that point as well, but you've got to have your strategy, your leverage, have anticipated, your focus on you, your position, that being on the offensive, my whole slay methodology. At that point, you do not give them your best offer. You do not show your best evidence. You decoy the whole thing until you are so ready to go. Basically, the way I look at it is you're building an invisible fence around them until you turn on the lights and they realize, oh my God, I'm totally pinned in. At that point, they have no choice but to resolve the issue with you or resolve the issues with you. So you're appearing weak, you're feigning ignorance, you know, oh, I don't know, I have no idea. Let them think that they're winning. Let them go all crazy on you. Allow them to go off. A lot of times that's good for you. It's hard, I know, because you don't want them to get away with anything a lot of times during the case. But sometimes if you have an ongoing case, it's good to let them screw up, because those little battles that show that they're screwing up help you to demonstrate to the judge who they actually are. So let them do that, you know, because then you can show patterns that they aren't doing what they're supposed to do, show patterns that they're liars, show patterns that they are bad parents or terrible with money or whatever it is that you need to show. It actually ends up helping you in the end, or that they have anger issues or whatever it is. So that definitely helps you. Sometimes it's really, really good to feign that you're weak, feign that you're ignorant. A lot of times, by the way, you can pretend like there's a particular thing that you really, really want, and it's not the thing that you really, really want, because then, you know, they go after that, you know, because they're going to go after the thing that they think that you really, really want, right? So let them go after that particular thing.
So a lot of people are concerned that the narcissist is going to lie to the judge over and over again. And I've seen them lie. Right. And I've seen them get away with their lies. Right. And, you know, there have been times when I've seen them say one thing and then 20 minutes later on the stand say something different. And yet the judge ruled for them. I mean, as a lawyer, it can be very frustrating myself as well. You know, and I think, did you not just notice the inconsistency over there? Like, what's going on? But a lot of people are concerned. And so I would love for you to weigh in on what advice you would give to people who are going, I feel like I can never win because they're just going to lie.
Um, Hopefully most judges will you know, because especially if you lie early and we catch you, you know, we don't, you know, it diminishes the trust we have in you altogether once we're caught in a lie. So the calm and continued exposition of what is going on by the attorney, and sometimes it you got to remember, it took you a minute to figure out that he or she was a narcissist to begin with. and it's going to take the judge a minute as well.
Oh, that's so true. That's a really
You
good
see what I'm
point.
saying? When you met him and married him.
That's so true. What a really good point. That is such a good point. Um, and what I tell people to do is, create summaries of their lies and inconsistent statements, like have a text message that says this on one day and another thing that says this. And it makes it easy for the judge to go, oh, okay, I can see the story here.
Right.
So would you agree with that? That's
Oh,
helpful.
absolutely. Consistent papering of what is occurring and to put it in, because you 20 minutes on my docket today. So if you put it in, if it's just all over the place, I can't get there with you. But if it's concrete for me, I can get there.
Yeah, that's perfect. I love that. And so, okay, so here's another question that I get a lot. People think the judge, they've been in front of the judge a couple of times. Maybe it's been on a discovery motion, or maybe it's been on a motion to compel, or a motion to enforce an order, or something like that. And the judge has ruled against them. So now they think that the judge is favoring the narcissist, that they're biased, they want to get rid of the judge or whatever. What would you say to that?
Always talk to your attorney first, because there's a lot of reasons you can lose emotion, and not necessarily be a function of a factual determination made in favor of the narcissist and against you. There could be legal reasons why it is. And so really talk to your attorney, and talk to your attorney the uh, with the understanding that you're trying to determine what it was that made the motion unsuccessful on your part, because you'll go first to the thing that bothers you the most, which is their narcissism. But you have to be able to really understand. Sometimes you lose emotion because of the legal uh, particulars of it, and sometimes it's because of the lie the narcissist told. But in order not to get consumed by that, you have to really listen to your attorney and come to their attorney with a clear head about, I'm going to accept what he or she is telling me about the reasons that our motions were denied or granted.
And it's not always the end of the story either.
Nope.
I mean, because as you go in front of the judge more and more, oftentimes it gets turned around. Oftentimes the judge
Patterns emerge.
Say it again.
Patterns emerge.
Exactly. And the judge starts to see, but it's really hard. And I want you to speak to this as well, which is, if somebody just comes in and says that person is a narcissist, what would you say to that?
I need evidence. I don't need conclusions. And I think that some people do come up with that person's a narcissist, and they could be a jerk or a fool. They're different levels of jerkdom, and you not necessarily diagnosable just because you're some level of a jerk. So don't come in screaming the concern of the day. I'm not the narcissism isn't the concern of the day, but it's the new.
It's the word du jour.
Yeah, it really is
saying it. And so, and what I tell people is that, it's almost like two kids fighting, like if you're a parent and both kids come in, she started it, no, she started it, no, she's the jerk, no, he's the jerk. But the judge is just like, oh, both of you stop it.
Yeah, so don't come in here making diagnoses, because don't come in crazy. Come in calm with me. If you come in all wild and out with all of the extremities, you got to come in cool, because I will listen longer and harder. And if you're normally a rational and calm person and there's some excitation later on, I will see it more as a circumstance that arose as a function of events, as opposed to tag you with hysterical, crazy dude or chick.
Love that. And that actually brings me to the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about. You are an expert in emotional control, and you wrote a whole book on it. It's called My Mother's Rules, A Practical Guide to Becoming an Emotional Genius. What's that?
That was very cheeky of me. It was a grand claim, but
I love it. And since you wrote this book, and since I teach people how to negotiate with narcissists, I would love to talk with you about the lessons that your mother taught you and the lessons that you have learned in dealing with people who are extremely difficult, volatile, uh, toxic, use whatever word you want to use. But when somebody is erratic, when somebody is volatile, it's very difficult to deal with them on an emotional level. And, I would say keeping your emotions in check is one of the most important things to do when you are negotiating. Would you agree with me on that?
absolutely. Part of a narcissist's power is the ability to destabilize you. That's part of their power, just to upset you and make you wobble. So I always think of my emotional life as separate and apart from my functional life, from my physical life. And so even in the midst of craziness, you got to have 15 minutes a day doing exercise or something joyful where that person is put into the closet because he cannot or she cannot live in the forefront of your mind all the time because he or she will be working against you all of the time. You still This is an unwinding of a past life. It is not your present. You know what I mean? It's transitional in nature, and you have to make sure that you cradle your emotionality and how good you feel uh consciously. You got to make it pursue. It's from 7 to 8. I'm gonna do whatever it takes, not whatever it takes, but I'm going to feel better. I'm going to do things and live and be in the moment and not simply be a divorcing person.
Yeah, and even if I mean, I also teach people how to negotiate in business as well. But regardless of who the person is that you're dealing with, if they're a narcissist, they know how to prey on your emotions. They know how to trigger you.
Right.
So, what would you say to somebody who is in the moment?
Mhm.
They're in the mediation, or they're in the
Mhm.
arbitration, or they're in the courtroom, and the person is saying things to absolutely trigger the other person. You're a thief, you're a liar, you're the narcissist, whatever they want to say to have you go, are you crazy? Are you kidding me? It's like that first instinct to just defend yourself. What would you say to them?
I always say in any fight you have, no matter who it's with, the first battle is always with yourself. So you go in there knowing what's going to happen. You go in there ready to catch those slings and arrows and put them down. Make it a game in your head. Well, that's one. Well, that's two. Well, that's three. Look at him. Look at me. Not having a reaction. Very calm. Very. Take a look at your neck. Whatever you got to do to get you to to deliver an emotional response that'll freak them out because they're not delivering because you're not delivering to them what they expect. It's almost a game. Like, I take pleasure in not getting upset and excited with or to people that are trying to upset and excite me. It's fun.
Ah, that's so great. I mean, I've often said, like, look at them like as if they're having a 2-year old having a tantrum on the floor. Like, you're not going to go get into it, right? But I like it even better that you're saying, like, have fun with it. Just, oh, there they go, there they go.
Yeah, you know what, in the middle of issues or problems, somebody's trying to get to me. I always like, oh my God, that is the most beautiful bracelet. Like, what you think of me and what you're thinking is so irrelevant to me. I had time to look at your wardrobe, and I ain't scared of you. You're not frightening me. I'm not in battle with you because I like your jewelry. And people like, and if you can send people off their game by being on your emotional game.
And what if people just don't feel that way? What do you think about fake it till you make it?
Absolutely. I lie to myself all the time. I'm not afraid of this. Every time before I get on a plane, I got to do a whole bunch of mental gymnastics and say, I am afraid, but I'm just going to get my behind on it and go. So I've been faking it till I made it all my life. if you ask anybody who was raised around me, they were just like shocked at what I do because I was extraordinarily shy kid, just extraordinarily. So you can fake it till you make it, and then you won't. It'll actually become your reality.
Yeah. Each time you face your fear and you do something that you were afraid of, you get a little bit more
A
courageous.
little bit more, a little bit more, and eventually it won't. It doesn't bother you as much, and you can just do it.
You have said that your mother was an emotional genius. Tell me more about that.
She was, and I think it was innate with her. And I think we used to, when I was on the bench, that's when I realized how brilliant she was. Because whenever I said anything that made a defendant like hang his head and say, wow, you know what, you got a point, it's because I've taken something that she's taught me, digested it, and reiterated it to him in a fashion that he could understand. And I used to talk, and my mother was very good at dealing with my father, who was bipolar. And I remember she told me a story when she was a little girl. Her mother had put her into an orphanage for Negro children back in the 30s during the Depression. And there was a little girl that used to play in the house next door, and mom used to think, oh, if I could just get out and play with that little girl, everything would be okay. And once she got out of the orphanage, she went running over to the little girl with her arms outstretched and said, little girl, little girl. And the little girl screamed and ran away. And mom said she stopped, looked around. She said, you know what? It ain't no better out here than it wasn't there, and kept it moving. And I just think that's how she has the ability to stop and assess how she felt about something. And if it's not borne out, she can put a period on it and do something else. And that's what she taught me.
So, what happens if somebody is super like emotions have gotten red hot in a negotiation? You know, whether it's something your mother has taught you or something you would know. How would you advise somebody to start to calm that down and bring the temperature down a little bit?
You can always excuse yourself from the table. I mean, and I did this not too long ago in another thing, but it's just I give voice to I can't speak right now. I'm upset. I actually give voice to it. Or I exit myself from the room, or I used to have all kinds of things that I would snap on my wrist, or things that I would read. It's going to be all right. Or, whatever it is I used to have on my screensaver. Are you fixing, or are you worrying? There are a whole lot of dumb little things you can do to remind you that this is a moment of time and a piece of history, and you've got a beautiful long life ahead of you. And this is just something that we got to get through.
I love that. And what about if somebody is just being extremely disrespectful to you right to your face in the middle of a conversation or a negotiation? What would you say to that?
That was really unnecessary, and let it go. Because people will continue to engage in behavior if they know that behavior will agitate you, if that is in fact what they're trying to do. If it doesn't, it loses its fun.
Yeah. And uh, what would you say is the best way for people to communicate as far as trial exhibits?
I don't know. And the legal game has changed so much since I was in the trenches. I would, with technology and all, I would not venture a guess on that one. I'm going to leave that to you.
I usually always say text message, email or court approved app like Our Family Wizard or something like that, or email, just because I think that it's they're the easiest as far as timestamps and being able to see the entire communication, and they have a date and all that sort of thing. That's my opinion. Just because texts they don't always have time and date stamps. They are often way too long to include the entire conversation.
Just to,
So
show you, when I was a judge back in Cleveland, they didn't have text yet.
oh yeah,
This wasn't there. All of that, none of that was there.
this is true. This is a new thing.
So let's dive in. You're going to remember to defeat narcissists every single time, to knock them dead. DEADD. Because you want to make sure they're really dead. So an extra D on the end. So the first D is to document everything. You want to make sure that you're taking care of every little detail. That means you are keeping track of every text, keeping track of every email, keeping track of when they're late, when they're early, when they didn't show up on time, every single thing, because when you're dealing with a narcissist in negotiations, it's worse than getting arrested, right? Everything you do and say is going to be used against you. Even if they're pretending like, oh, I want to keep this amicable. That's always a trick, because with a narcissist, you're either for them or against them. And if you're against them, then you become public enemy number one. Even if they know deep down inside that they shouldn't be acting like that, they cannot help themselves because they don't trust you. They don't trust themselves. They don't trust anybody. Everybody's an enemy. Remember, they lie all the time. They lie even if they don't need to lie. They lie about things that are readily verifiable. They're constantly looking for that way to get that narcissistic supply. And part of the way that they get supply, don't forget, is manipulating you, seeing you squirm. It's about that game, right? Making sure that you're documenting everything that's happening is going to be very, very important. If you ask them for a schedule change and they said no, they asked you for a schedule change, with the kids, and you said yes, document that, because those kinds of things can become very good trial exhibits down the road. How many times were you agreeable and how many times were they agreeable or not agreeable? Great leverage down the road. All right. So documenting everything, making sure that you're keeping unrelated parties updated about the situation, because you don't know who might be ending up to be a good witness for you down the road as well. Keeping track of financial documents, of photographs, of audio tapes, videotapes, every single thing, because you don't know down the road, patterns end up being good leverage. That's number one of your D. That's your D. Attention to all of you who have ever felt trapped by a narcissist. Are you struggling in a relationship with a narcissist and feeling powerless or paranoid and not sure what to do? It is time to take back control and flip the script on their game. I want to introduce to you the ultimate solution to breaking free from the grip of narcissistic manipulation. Join me for a groundbreaking webinar called The 3 Must-Have Secrets to Communicating with a Narcissist. Hi, my name is Rebecca Zung, and I've been recognized by US News as one of the best lawyers in America, and I'm a globally recognized narcissist negotiation expert. And I spent years studying and mastering the art of negotiating with narcissists. I know firsthand the devastation these relationships can cause, but I also know the key to regaining your power, and I know how to shift the dynamic with these high conflict personalities. In this exclusive webinar, you will discover the 3 essential secrets to go from feeling paralyzed and feeling like a victim to becoming victorious. This isn't just theory. These are proven techniques that I have used to help literally thousands of people go from feeling powerless to feeling victorious and actually breaking free from the grip of narcissistic control.
Hi, my name is Heather, and I have never felt so compelled to give a review as I do now for attorney Rebecca Zung. The strength I had gained and the confidence that I had gained from Rebecca actually allowed me to get a different self-worth and presence in myself. And due to that, I was actually able to pick myself up within, made tremendous difference. And, she has literally changed the situation for me and mostly given me a sense of presence, strength, self-confidence, and well-being that I'm just so grateful for her.
Hi, I'm Dr. Joe Vitale. I know Rebecca Zung. She interviewed me, but I'm also aware of all of her products. What she's doing is saving people who are going through the dark night of the soul. This can be the turning point for you.
Don't let that narcissist have that grip on your life any longer. It's time to rewrite your history and take charge of your future and unlock that power within you. Sign up now for 3 must-have secrets to communicating with narcissists and embark on a transformational journey toward your freedom, toward your empowerment. Break free from the grasp of that narcissist and create the life that you deserve. Join me, attorney Rebecca Zung, narcissist negotiation expert, and let's rewrite your narrative together. Register now at slay.rebeccazung.com and let's take the first step toward your life of victory. Now let's go to E, which is emotions. Keeping them in check. They will definitely come after you and look for that Achilles heel. They're going to look for ways to get you under your skin, to get you upset, to trigger you in some way, because that's how they get their jollies. Remain calm no matter what. Don't show any emotion. You know, you've heard that expression, gray rock. I mean, you can show them compassion. You can show them dignity. You can kill them with kindness. No matter what they say to you, you can be like, oh, I know, I see you, I get it. Oh, that's wonderful. Can I get you some cookies? You know, whatever. I mean, you can just be as lovely as possible. I mean, when faced with accusations, slander, lies, you never confirm, you never deny, you just pretend like you're reporting the news. You just looking at them. Oh, yes, I see that you just said that. You know, that's very interesting feedback that you just mentioned to me. I heard what you just said. Ambiguity is your best friend. You know, you don't say anything. You don't give any kind of emotional nothing. The more you can just stay out of that, then the better it's going to be for you, because they're looking for that rise. They're looking to get you hooked in. They go fishing and they go baiting you in, and then they use your reactions against you. And as long as they're getting supply, they're never going to leave you alone. That's number 2 is the E. You know, so knocking them dead. DE is emotions. Keep them in check no matter what. Then next is A. Always wear that white hat. So hard. You feel like it's not fair because as you're moving toward court, you feel like, oh my gosh, they're getting away with everything. But let me tell you, there's no getting away with, because it's not until you get to court that things actually happen. It's not like there's little fairies that jump out into your living room and go, hey, you're not allowed to do that. So you have to understand that you have to wear that white hat until you get to a place where it actually matters. While you're waiting for that time, you have to let them do what they're going to do. And yes, it doesn't feel fair, or no, it doesn't feel fair, whatever, I don't know how you say that, but they're going to do the things that they're going to do. You make your documented attempts to resolve issues. You know, you allow them to reject you. You allow them to stonewall you. It just serves as your good faith attempts to try to settle. You know, you allow them to make accusations against you, and you can just say, I mean, you can say that's not true if you want to or whatever, but I wouldn't get too deep into it. Don't defend yourself. Don't explain, don't justify, don't get into the mud, because then they're sucking you in. I would just allow them to say whatever they want. Don't allow them to probe you. Don't allow them to get into it with you. I would just wear that white hat. You know, when they start saying things and lobbing their accusations, let them lose the battles to win the war. Turn the other cheek. Make it look like you are above reproach. Keep yourself high, because what happens is the judge will just see two people fighting. Otherwise, you're just as bad as the other one. But if the judge sees that one person has been the good one and the other person has been the bad one, it makes it a whole lot easier to figure out who's the one that they're not going to like. And, underneath those robes, they're human beings. And they make choices about who's the one that they can believe and who's the one that they can't. So they're looking to see, while they read those messages in Our Family Wizard or whatever, who's the one that always said kind things, who's the one that always agreed to changes, who's the one that was always the good one. So always wear the white hat. And I have a whole video on how narcissists sabotage their own lives. You can check it out. It's called How Covert Narcissists Sabotage Their Own Lives. I would highly recommend that you check it out. And I also recommend that you get my 15-page free ebook, which is at winmynegotiation.com. It's a Crush My Negotiation prep worksheet. It will help you win your negotiation. So many people have won their entire negotiations just on that. So grab that at winmynegotiation.com. And remember, don't go crazy with asking for stuff that makes you look bad with the judge either. I mean, you want to make sure that what you ask for comports with the law. And again, you're wearing that white hat. You walk that straight and narrow path. All right. You don't want to look antagonistic. You don't want to look like the bully. You don't want to look like you're the one who is just as bad. Let them make their own bet, right? So that is the A, DEA. Now, the first D in Knock 'em Dead. That is, don't go anywhere alone. They're going to look for reasons to try to frame you. They're going to look for reasons to try to make you look bad. So I would definitely try to have witnesses around you as many times as you can, even with your deposition. By the way, if you're going to be deposed, they pull antics. A lot of times, depending on the kind of narcissist that you're dealing with, they make faces. They try to bait you into doing things that emotionally trigger you, that sort of thing. So if you have the extra bucks, I would do a video deposition if you have the money to do that, because you want to just keep them in check if you can. And you want to stay away from giving them opportunities to create false allegations, especially, depending on how crazy emotional they are. They will say, oh, they said this, they did that, whatever. You don't want to give them those opportunities. To the best of your ability, I wouldn't, be alone with them. Right. And by the way, if you need additional support, get the help and support that you need. Make sure you have therapy, you have a friend group, you have people around you who can support you. If you need additional support, make sure you join my free private Facebook group, Narcissist Negotiators with Rebecca Zung. If you need additional help with therapy, we have a sponsor on this channel, which is BetterHelp. You can go to betterhelp.com/Rebecca Zung. We receive commissions on that because they are a sponsor on this channel. You don't pay any extra for that. We just want you to have access to help and support that you can trust. The last D is decoy. Decoy. Why I say this is you never let go of your leverage. You never let go of what your offer is going to be. You never tell them anything until you are ready to tell them what your best evidence is going to be, anything else. You just keep them thrown off the scent. And honestly, I wouldn't tell them what it is that you really want ever. Even at the end of the deal, when it seems like you got what you wanted, I would just, do your best Meryl Streep or Al Pacino or whatever it is. Oh my God, I can't believe they got that. Oh, that's terrible. Whatever. And if you got exactly what you wanted, great. Take your ego out of it. Let them think they won. So what? Move on, because you can move on with your life and be happy that you're done. Okay, because if you can feign ignorance, you know nothing, have nothing, let them suspect nothing, and then you got this. You can move on. You've got freedom. I want you to put that in the comments right now. I got this, because you do. You got this, and you can do this. You're the smarter one. They're not very good with this because their emotions rule them. You can be better than this. Put that in the comments right now. I got this. I got this. The weaker you appear, it'll encourage their aggression and their arrogance or whatever. It'll work to your advantage. Don't show your hand. You can even, maybe throw them off with some bad information. Oh, this is the thing that I really want. Because if you do that, then, they'll go after that, whatever thing it is that you don't actually want. You know that they're irrational. So expect that they will be irrational. Be surprised if they're not, but don't be lulled when they act rational and normal, because you know how they are. Those are just some of the ways. That's how to knock them dead. DEADD. If you do these things, it will help you. It will help you ambush them. It'll help you get what you want in court, and it'll help you be fully prepared for that fight, and it will help you have that power that you want and show the judge who the more powerful one is. The more that you can show that you are the stronger one, the more that you can show that you're capable, the more that you can become the most powerful version of yourself, that is authentic power. Narcissists are never going to have authentic power because they stand in power that's based on a lie. And power that's based on a lie is not real power. But what you're creating now is power that's based in something that's real. And you're creating a resilience that is stronger than anything. And you're becoming the best version of yourself. And just remember that.
Okay, so before we dive into what to do about that narcissist in a divorce, let me just give you a few highlights of the kinds of tricks and manipulations that they try to pull in a divorce. And believe me, I have seen it all. I've represented them, and I've had them on the other side many, many times. So let me tell you the kinds of patterns. They actually all try to pull the same sort of tricks. So let me tell you the kinds of things that they do. Okay, the number one thing that they try to do is win at all costs. They are going to try to make you look as bad as possible, no matter how ridiculous it seems. They're going to twist everything. And that's why I tell you to put everything in writing. We're going to talk about more of that in a minute. But everything you say, do, or the way you breathe is going to be try to twist it and manipulate it and in whatever way possible so that they look good and you look bad, because they're going to try to win at all costs. So here is number two, the things that they do. And here's the crazy part, because despite what I just said about them going to try to win at all costs, winning is actually not what they want to do. What they want to do is get the best of you. That's actually what they want to do. It's going to look like they're winning at all, trying to win at all costs, but what they're actually trying to do is manipulate you at all costs. So just remember that now that you are stepping out of their world, you don't have any more value for them. Because for a narcissist, people only have value to the extent that they can use them for their own potential gain. So now that you're stepping out of that and you have no more potential gain for them, now the only goal is just to manipulate you and make your life miserable. Number three thing they try to do is use the court system as their sword. So they're going to file as many motions as possible, litigate as much as possible, make you spend as much money as possible, and make your life miserable by dragging you through the court system. Unfortunately, that's number three. Number four thing they try to do in a divorce is actually kind of related to number three, but it's its own separate category, and that is they try to obstruct you from everything. So They're not going to provide the discovery that they're supposed to. They're just going to make you work for everything. And so as part of that, you're going to end up having to file motions to compel, and you're going to have to be running up the fees and that sort of thing. And they'll have court orders, and they're not going to obey them, and you're going to be sitting there going, how in the heck can he or she get away with this? Well, the bottom line is that the only person who has any power over anyone is the judge. So they get away with it until you get back in front of a judge and tell them what they've been doing. So that's number 4, obstruction. If this sounds familiar to you, give me an amen in the comments. Okay, now that I've scared the crap out of you, I'm going to tell you what to do about it. Number 1, you've got to have a clear strategy. It's better be crystal clear, and it better be strong, and it better be powerful. You better to be ready to go on the offensive and have your leverage ready. You better do your research, do your homework, have everything you need to incentivize that other side to want to come to a resolution with you. Even if you say, I don't want to fight, I want it to be amicable, great. But if you've got a narcissist on the other side, they don't feel the same way. All right. So if you want them to come to that nice, easy conclusion, then you're going to have to incentivize them to do that. And the only way you can do that is by getting leverage. I have a video on how to negotiate with a narcissist specifically. You're going to definitely want to check that out, and I will drop a link to that below. Okay, number 2, you're going to want to pick a really strong lawyer, and you're going to want to pick a lawyer that knows what he or she is doing. Make sure that they know what type of person that they're going to be dealing with, so that they can help you develop that strategy that I talked about in step number 1. And related to this step number 2, by the way, is to make sure you pick a lawyer that you're really going to trust, and then trust that lawyer. Because what your narcissist, soon to be ex, is going to do is try to get you to distrust your lawyer. That person is going to say your lawyer's only out for whatever, or only money, or to break us up, or whatever it is. But you know, if you are dealing with a narcissist, that person is probably a pathological liar. And so why would they start telling the truth now? So the only reason they want your lawyer out of the picture is because then they can drive that wedge in there and get control back over you again. So once you pick a lawyer that you really like and you know you can trust, listen to him or her, okay? Okay, number 3 thing that you can do is document everything in writing. You know, he or she is going to say to you, oh, let's just meet at Starbucks. Let's just have a conversation. We don't need all this stuff. You know, so that's the kind of thing they're going to do. And then every single thing you say will have been ended up being twisted. And you're going to be gaslighted, and they're going to be saying, oh, no, we had this conversation and you agreed to X, Y, Z, or they're going to send you an email afterwards saying, oh, and we agreed to X, Y, and Z, and you know you never had that conversation, right? So that's what they're going to do. Make sure everything's in writing as absolutely much as possible, because they're going to try to manipulate you anyway, but at least you can try to minimize it. And that's what we're talking about here. You're not going to be able to change the other person. The other person is who they are. But you can do things to try to protect yourself and be feeling like you're on the offensive rather than on the defensive the whole time. Okay, and number 4 thing that you can do is keep your cool. You're going to want to keep your emotions in check. It's one of my 6 steps of winning in any negotiation, and I'll go ahead and put a link to that video as well. But you're definitely going to want to keep your emotions in check, because that's what they want. They want you to lose your cool. They want to get under your skin. And as soon as you allow them to do that, now they're already winning again. Now it's working, whatever manipulation it is that they're trying to pull on you. So keep your cool, keep your emotions in check, and don't let them get the best of you.